Next one, there was only one guy. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Zach is sharing. Somebody is sharing.
All right, Mr. Chairman, it is 6:20 and you have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to call to order City of Lake Worth Beach Historic Resources Preservation Board. Roll call, please.
Elaine DeRiso,
Present.
Laura Devlin,
Here.
Robert Dorinzo,
Here.
Nadine Heights, Ed DeVoe,
Here.
Ed LeBlanc.
Here.
Okay, can we all stand for Pledge of Allegiance, please? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Any additions, deletions, reordering, and
There-
approval minutes?
There are no
None?
additions,
Okay.
deletions, or reordering.
Can we get an approval of the minutes for the April 9th meeting?
I approve the minutes for the April 9th meeting.
May I get a second? I got a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, swearing in of staff and applicants.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give tonight shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say yes.
Yes. Proof of publication?
Yes, that was provided in the packet.
Yep. Okay, no withdrawals or postponements. Any board disclosures?
Chair, I have to excuse myself for the first one, 711 South Palmway.
Okay. No problem.
And I will disclose that I do live within 100 feet of the.
Speak around.
Sorry, I live within 100 feet of at 105 South J Street, within 100 feet of the proposed zoning change. And that the location that I live there will not affect any recommendations that I would make based on the evidence here.
Is allowed to participate in the vote.
Batteries. Of course.
Thank you. So thank you, Mr. DeVoe, for disclosing your conflict on item A, and he will not be participating. Ms. LeBlanc, thank you for disclosing. You may participate and vote in item B.
Okay. Other board members, y'all all right? No disclosure? Okay, I have no disclosure this month. All right. Item A, Mr. DeVoe, you need to step down, please. Matter where you can sit out there. No?
Go either, yeah,
That way?
not in the room.
Go.
Sorry.
All right. Kicking you out, Ed.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Ann Hamilton presenting project number 25-00100049, which is consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for new construction of a single-family residential structure at 711 South Palmway in the South Palm Park Historic District. Here's a location map for your reference of the property. It is generally located on South Palmway between 6th Avenue South and 8th Avenue South. Currently, there is a single-family house in the structure. Some of you may recognize it. As a bit of brief background history, in August of 2022, the applicant received a zoning verification letter to split the parcel into two 50-foot parcels with the demolition of the existing single-family house. The applicant did put in a request to demolish the single-family house and build a new construction in 2023. That request for demolition was denied. However, an update to our ordinance in 2024 allowed for the demolition of any single-family homes that are non-contributing and located within a flood zone. So they do have a demo permit in for the existing structure, and our ordinance does allow for the demolition of this structure. But the applicant has come back with an updated design for the new construction that they're proposing on one of the lots. So here's one of the site plans. You can see that the proposed new construction will be on the north portion of the lot, and the south portion of the lot will remain vacant for the moment. Here's a streetscape. We do want to call out one small inaccuracy in that the proposed vacant lot, which has been highlighted here, would probably appear wider than in the streetscape is provided, and also that some of the houses on either side perhaps are a bit out of scale with the proposed two-story. So just letting you know, they have provided a proposed streetscape, but it is, something that I would recommend that you look closely at. This is the proposed front elevation of the structure. They are proposing a contemporary interpretation of a Monterey style home, which is included in the design guidelines. Usually includes a front porch integrated under the roof, and decorative design details as seen here, such as shutters and lookers, and a mixture of siding materials. Here's the side elevation, the other side elevation, and the rear elevation, and the roof plan. The structure is to be roofed with flat cement tile roof. Here are the floor plans. It is a two-story home, and some renderings for your review. The application does meet all zoning requirements. Full review will be done at permitting. They are requesting a 0.5 exemption for their FAR under Florida Green Building, and a condition has been added to address this in your proposed conditions, that they'll need to provide evidence of that prior to permitting. It does meet the guidelines for new construction. It is generally compatible with the surrounding historic district and the proposed architectural style, including massing. Although the massing is slightly taller than most buildings around it, given that most buildings in the general vicinity are one-story, we have recommended a condition that the structure be brought down at least 1 foot to more closely align with the district as a whole. Here's some reference for you in terms of what a Monterey-style home generally looks like from our design guidelines. And like I said, the massing, we do recommend that it's brought down by a minimum of 1 foot. The fenestration and roof material are appropriate. And this is actually meant to say the staff recommends approval of the proposed new construction. It is consistent with the city's land development regulation, the historic preservation ordinance, and the historic preservation design guidelines for new construction, and is a successful interpretation of a Monterey style home. So here are the conditions of approval. These are included in your packet. I'll highlight the lowering by 1 foot. Shutter proportions shall be sized to fit their openings and affixed to the window casings. Decorative outlookers shall be composed of wood or composite materials, and the applicant shall work with staff to revise the proposed windows on the north and south elevation. Most of the rest, and the Florida Green Building requirement. Most of the rest of these are just our standard conditions that you see on most new construction. But please let me know if you have any questions about any of them. And here are some potential motions. Thank you.
I have a question. I mean, I'm assuming this is a larger home compared to the neighboring properties, kind of a little more.
Larger in the sense that it is a two-story, yes.
How does it sit in line with the other homes? I don't know. Do you have a?
Yeah, so actually, if you look at the site plan, this structure is proposed to be set back 30 feet rather than the 20 feet that most neighboring homes are. I do think that does give some relief to this two-story.
Okay, that was you answered my question. Thank you. All right.
Did the elevation show the flood zone elevation?
Because it is going to be up a little higher than you need.
Yeah, so it does not look like they're accurately depicting that, especially given that, we had a discussion that it's being entered at grade. There certainly will be site grading and probably a step up at least to the structure.
Right, because if the existing structure is below the required flood elevation, right? So that's what's going on here basically is they have to rebuild. Is it like 1 foot above or 2 feet above the?
Yeah, that's it. Sure you guys have some questions.
So regarding the elevation.
Second, sir, who you are and where you live.
Okay, my name is Renberg Gordon and I live in West Palm Beach.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry.
Boutros Bonaro, the architect on the project, 21 Northeast 22nd Street, Miami.
Thank you.
Thanks. So regarding your elevation height, we haven't get to that point as yet in terms, we have to check with the FEMA requirement in that area.
Yeah, because it's still conceptual right here.
So,
Okay.
But
Right,
like,
we're at consideration, yes.
yes, it's a requirement.
We don't know exactly.
Yeah.
No.
That's gonna affect that
Consideration
1
of
foot
appropriateness.
height thing though, isn't it?
Well, I mean. Generally, the 1 foot bringing it down in height is just to. A suggestion in order to bring down the mass, and that is with looking forward in terms of it will be higher. And that 1 foot will hopefully lower the overall height. In order
Okay.
to make it look smaller.
All right.
It could come off the top and.
Are you guys okay with the conditions the city posed?
so I just wanted to say,
Sure.
thank you so much for presenting the project. I think you did a great job and thanks for your help with everything so far. And we are, this project has gone through quite a bit of like changes. We started this in 2021. So we've like presented, I think like at this point, this might be like the 6th iteration. And I think we're all happy, both the Historical Preservation Board, the client, ourselves, and this is, we're happy to move forward with this with all the conditions that you have stated, except for number 1. Client really wants to push for that, to have that height. And I think 2 things that we've done in the design that we want to go against number 1, if we can, is that number 1, we push the building back even further. So that reduces the overall height,
Yeah,
as you
because
mentioned.
There are newer construction when you drive down certain streets in the city, I'm trying to be very, that are very imposing.
Exactly.
Compared to the
Yeah.
other side.
Height.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Imposing.
Exactly.
Okay.
We thought pushing it back that extra 10 feet would allow
Maybe.
that, like, that impact right on the front.
Right.
And in addition to that too, it's that, the building towards the right, even though like I do agree with the widths of the streetscape, that could have been adjusted, but the building towards the right, which is a 1-story, actually is 18 feet. We got the record drawings from basically top to bottom. And where we are from our first floor to the top of the roof ridge that we're showing there is 20 feet for a 2-story house. Right, so we're thinking that, I think it is appropriate for that scale. And yeah, so number 1 would be the one that we
Just
just.
a correction, it's 20 feet to the, at least the way that you've shown it, to the top of the wall, not to the roof ridge, unless
Correct.
that's not dimensioned.
Correct, to the top of the beam, which if you go to the renderings, even though in elevation, you see the top of that ridge. But if you go to the first renderings, when you're standing and you're walking on the street, if you can go to that slide, that would be great. The perceivable height, you never see the first ridge. Like you'll never get an opportunity to see that top, even though the elevation shows that point. Really, you're looking to the underside of that beam if you're in a car, right? So your perceivable height of the structure, we would argue, is 20 feet. Right, from that first floor line as we're showing it.
Well, it depends how far away you are.
Yes.
Yeah, if you go way across the street, it would be very hard to see the exact top of that ridge though, right? So perceivable height, we think is 20 feet.
What does the extra foot give the client? Well, how will that change or not change?
We're trying to maintain a 9-foot ceiling height on both levels.
And that's if we're lucky with engineering and ducting and, you have some of these beams that come down. I think for a newer house that they were at least hoping, and they're tall people, so they were hoping to at least get 9 on that interior finish.
Now, is it something where you could tray the ceiling on the 2nd floor?
We explored the option of scissor trusses, and with our engineers right now, the way that they're doing it, they're giving us a hard time on getting a full scissor truss to span the entire way without doing additional columns or different supports, but that is an option that we could explore that we did. But as of right now, they're giving us a hard time with doing a scissor truss or tray. And in addition, I think overall, we're 6 feet under the allowed maximum height. It's not like we went to the maximum that we
Right,
could.
but we're unsure about the elevation with the flood line and all that.
Is it taken, it's taken from first floor, right? That's the height
Right,
calculation.
the overall, the flood elevation, we measure the height from the flood elevation
Yeah.
requirement. Just keep in mind that this finished floor is gonna be about 2.5 feet above grade.
Yeah.
So it's gonna start about 2.5 feet above, higher than what the existing
They-
building is. And so
Yeah.
instead of that wall being 20 feet, it's gonna be probably about 22.5. Now, they may fill part of a site, but as it relates to the buildings adjacent to it, it's gonna read starting 2.5 feet taller than they are.
Okay. Any other questions?
Other than that, we're happy with all the other conditions.
All right. Guys,
If the condition one is a hard and fast condition for staff and the board, how you guys gonna handle that? If you have to meet condition one?
And the client, they've been really adamant about that. That may be a deal breaker for them. I don't know how, at that point, if the project at that point isn't even feasible for them at that point, and we've been here for quite a long time, so something that they're a hard no for them, or a hard ask that we take all conditions other than that.
Am I hearing that they would abandon the project if that condition is?
That would be the case, but I know it's a big ask for them to reduce it, especially since we've been reducing it throughout the iterations, right?
Mhm.
I think it was like up to 4, the first one we presented was 4 or 5 feet taller, and we've been going down, right? So this was what we decided together at the absolute minimum for them to be happy with their project, right? For it to even be functional, so.
Now, would you be comfortable with a condition from staff of exploring what would be feasible to drop it, if not a full foot, at least seeing what? If we could leave it open-ended, but say that it does have to be dropped, is that something that the client would be open to?
Our last thorough meeting with them is that they really want to push for like how we're proposing, especially since, we've been going down so much already, And I think 6 feet is a big drop from what code requires, right? It's not like a foot less or 2, but 6 feet, quite a bit from.
Well, it's not what the code requires, it's what the code allows. Yeah, it did.
Yeah, what the code-
guys can get creative.
Just as a reference, because the wall height they're showing now is the absolute maximum wall height they are allowed by the setback from the sides.
Okay.
So you're not directly entitled to the maximum wall height, especially in a historic district. And we have very few 2-story buildings in our historic districts that have a 9-foot ceiling from finished floor to finished ceiling. That's why we suggested either a scissor truss or a tray ceiling, and they can do a double scissor truss if they can't span the whole width.
Would that greatly increase their costs,
It shouldn't.
Construction costs?
You said it should or shouldn't?
It shouldn't, because the same structural wall that's holding up the truss that goes from north to south could still be used for the double scissor truss.
No, but I would like to hear from an architect on our board.
Oh.
Thank you.
You could sit down. Which are Tim?
Ours, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I'd- thoughts on it, because
Good.
I mean,
Go ahead.
yeah, let me just, for another question about, I know we looked quickly at the context, but I didn't really at the time, maybe I didn't register and the drawing was kind of out of scale. Could we take another look at that? So we pretty much don't have any other two-story homes on that block. Maybe.
And you're saying the one to the right is a single story, but it's just a really tall single story?
It is, yeah. I mean, you can see it. It's the one in blue with the truck at the bottom. So it is a little taller than the others in the context that you're shown, but not, certainly not two-story.
But they also made the comment that this drawing is out of
Yeah.
scale. Those are drawn. You can kind of sense that those are shown a little bit larger
I
than
wish
they
we, I mean,
really
'cause
are.
that's happened to us before. I wish we, because we're kind of basing a lot on this, and when they're not to scale, it's like, what's the point of looking at it? You know what I mean?
Well, we're also talking about the floodplain elevation.
Yeah.
Which is not shown here. So we don't really know how tall that house is going to be compared to the other houses on the
Mhm.
street. Where we really are just completely, without that information, we have no idea. Because the floodplain elevation could be 3 feet higher than where the
Mhm.
grade line is shown there. So that
Mhm.
means their first floor is actually going to be 3 feet higher than where it's shown in that
Mhm.
illustration.
Mhm.
We did have on their survey, it looked like their existing grade was like 7.3-ish. I don't recall the exact flood zone that this is in, but it's likely in either a 9 or 11. We could pull that up, but yeah, their survey has this as existing 7.3
Existing 7.3 and the.
for the grade on this property.
NAVD of the property now. And
Yeah.
so what's the flood, design flood elevation or what, I forget what the actual terminology. Do we know what that is?
Well, we have a 1 foot freeboard height, so if the requirement is 9, it would actually be 10.
Okay,
That's
so-
why I said it's going to be at least 2.5 feet taller than what
Okay,
it's
so we're 2.5 feet up from where the grade is. And it's not really, so if this elevation was accurate, it would be 2.5 feet up would be where their first floor was. And it could be that they decide to ramp up the grade around the house, so it doesn't look as tall, but it still is taller in relation to the neighbors.
That's the intention.
What's the intention? Oh,
To build up the grade. I mean,
Yeah, I
in
think
my
you can see the slope
opinion,
there.
it will look out of context with the new height with the flood elevation. But I also have to say, that's kind of a fact of life when you're building in a flood zone, and we
Mhm.
have to allow some
Mhm.
flexibility for people when they want to build in a flood zone, because we can't require them to stay in this exact same scale as the neighboring structures because it won't work.
Mhm.
And we don't want to, we want to encourage people to do the right thing if they're going to build in a flood zone anyhow. It's better. It's
Mhm.
better for everybody. It's not just something that the insurance companies want. We all want it.
Mhm. Well, then make a proposal.
But let me just say one thing that, it seems like there have been accommodations made to satisfy the, requirements. This is a Monterey style house, which is 2 stories. So that's not completely out of, context with the historic district. I'd hate to have this project go to waste or not happen because of 1 foot. 1 foot is, a ruler, 1 foot. So if that's, the sticking point for them walking away from this project, I think that'd be unfortunate.
Okay, I'll make a motion. I move to approve the historic Review Preservation Board, project number 25-001-00049 with staff recommended conditions with the exception of the first condition for the construction of a new single-family structure at 711 South Palm Way, based on the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lake Worth Beach Land Development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion, got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, ordinance, city. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, should we? We have a quorum. Where is he? All right.
We're moving along. Good luck.
Ed, how are you?
Is that Annie? Yes. Welcome back, Ed.
Well, thank you.
You missed it.
Don't tell me. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a related question, but sort of not? I never understand when I'm reading all of these for the historic district where it says you cannot combine styles. I mean, people have combined styles throughout architectural history. Why is that not allowed?
Could we save that for board member comments at the end?
Sure. Sorry.
She's gonna get ready for
Write it
that.
down.
She's got notes on that one. All right.
All right, Glenn, is this one that you need to read by title?
Sorry, I pulled up the next one.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Ordinance number 2025-05 is an ordinance of the City of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending the city's official zoning map from the zoning district of mixed use East MUE to downtown DT on the properties generally located on the west side of South K Street and north of First Avenue South. That's 13 South K Street, 19 South K Street, 25 South K Street, 704 First Avenue South, and 710 First Avenue South, and more particularly described in Exhibit A, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Thank you. So, like you just said in the title, this is a request, city initiated request for rezoning of 5 parcels. The parking lot behind Lilo's, if you're all familiar with that, and then the 2 parcels or 3 parcels south of that. So this is the current zoning map. You can see they are currently mixed use east. They're all in that red color. And then the proposal would be to change them all to DT. So that would be what the map would look like following the rezoning. Existing conditions, like I said, it's the parking lot and then vacant parcels. So 5 parcels, about 0.79 acres. The rezoning is primarily to facilitate the relocation of 2 existing historic structures that currently reside at 17 South M Street and development of a new city parking garage.
Right.
Pretty simple analysis. You've got it in
Yes.
your staff report. It's consistent with our comp plan, strategic plan, the existing future land use, and the criteria for rezoning in section 23.2-36. So we recommend that you recommend approval to the city commission. And your potential motions.
All right.
You throw that map back up in.
You want this one or the other one?
That one or the other one?
You should, the other one's fine.
Yes. That's from the back of the theater all the way to First. Yeah.
So now, all of that would be
Downtown.
downtown.
Yeah. You kind of see the.
Right.
what we're at versus
Right.
that.
All right, we're all right. Public comment? You could say something, but you gotta give your name.
Sorry.
No, you have to come over here. Okay, then that's fine. Board comments or questions? It's pretty
Just one-
simple.
Just one question. I mean, I get what the intent is, and that makes sense to me, but I wouldn't want it to be my recommendation. If I recommend in favor of it, I wouldn't want it to be misconstrued as my opinion being that a four-story parking garage would necessarily be compatible with the two-story surrounding buildings that are there now.
Okay, you're running for, oh, no, you live there.
That's going to be a separate case. It's going to
Oh,
come
yeah.
before you in a few months.
Now, would he have to recuse himself at that point?
He might.
Yeah. Let's get a motion.
Well, I'm
Oh,
rereading, and it says here that the proposed rezoning will support this goal by enabling the development of a parking garage, will enhance public amenities and attract both businesses and residents to the city. So I would take that to read that as an implicit,
vote any way you want.
that's what I'm looking for, implicit support of it,
Mhm.
or explicit, says will support. I'm not saying which one would
Right.
go one way or
Oh, I
another.
understand
I'm
what you're
just-
saying.
Yeah, I'm just
You're
responding to
speaking
Ed's.
my question.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, I
responding to
can-
Ed's comment.
Thank-
I mean, it's like, okay, we're gonna propose, I think that we can approve, personally, I'll speak for myself. I can approve the rezoning without approving
Correct.
Correct.
the overall project one way or another.
Yeah, correct.
That's
Yeah, no,
correct,
I'm
yes?
following you
Okay,
100%.
okay.
We make a motion?
Make a motion, Ed.
Make a motion.
I want me to make the motion.
Oh, Lord. I thought you wanted.
Oh, sure.
Oh, you're being.
Make me
dirty
make the
talking.
motion.
Yeah.
All right, I move to recommend approval of ordinance 2025-05 for the proposed zoning map amendment based on the data analysis and the staff report and the testimony at the public hearing.
I second that.
First and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
No, I said no.
Oh.
Did you?
Yes,
Okay, so we got 4-1.
4-1.
based on the advice from my colleague.
There you go. All right, so Ed's against
Take me
it.
with
For the record.
interpretations.
All right,
4-1.
you got it, 4-1. All right, next one, ordinance 2025-04.
Okay, really quick, before we sentence Glenn to reading the very long title, wanted to give a quick note of context. Your colleagues in the Planning and Zoning Board met last week. They felt like they wanted more time with this ordinance to read through all of the changes and get a better grip on it. So they did push their discussion of it to their next meeting, which is August 6th. If you all feel the same way, you can also move to table it, or you can hear it tonight, just kind of giving you guys a reference on timeline.
Well, really, I mean, if they're waiting, then when does it go to the commission? After they're done?
Yeah, it would be September
It's up
for
to
the
you guys.
commission.
We can table if you.
Yeah. We just table it to when they're done with, in case they have, all right. Might be some changes to what we have in front of us after their meeting.
If there was any changes, basically, we would describe what they recommended the changes to be. And then we would bring those changes to the city commission as part of that.
Okay, so we're just kind of giving permission for them to do what they need to do to bring it in front of the commission. No,
No.
so why don't we table this?
You have another option. You could discuss the proposed changes to some degree. If you arrive at questions that you have, you can continue it to a date certain, either at your meeting, possibly in July, which I would not suggest, because because it'll be a busy meeting, and then you could continue it to the meeting in August. But it would be helpful for us to have some insight from you if it is continued versus waiting until August and then having questions and it gets continued again, because there are some things that were directed to us to provide changes that came from the city commission directly. And they're a bit anxious to have some of those things move forward.
Okay, so why don't we hear it, discuss it, and we'll figure that out after we hear it. Okay, thank you.
But it is be too late to table it, right?
Well, what it is we'll have a conversation about it and we'll continue it.
I'll continue it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Because if you table it, you then have to vote to put it on an agenda in the future and we have to re-advertise it. So continue it to a date certain helps versus tabling.
Thank you, Mr. Waters.
Thank you.
Read this nice long ordinance title.
Go.
Ordinance number 2025-04 is an ordinance of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending chapter 23, land development regulations, article 1, general provisions, division 2, definitions, section 23.1-12, definitions, article 2, administration, division 1, decision makers, section 23.2-6, site plan review team, and division 3, permits, section 23.2-28, administrative adjustments / administrative use permits, section 23.2-29, conditional use permits, section 23.2-30, site plan review, section 23.2-31, site qualitative standards, section 23.2-32, site plans and specifications, and section 23.2-39, affordable / workforce housing program. Article 3, zoning districts, division 1, generally, section 23.3-6, use tables, and division 2, residential districts, section 23.3-7, SFR, single family residential, and division 3, mixed use districts, and section 23.3-13, MU-E, mixed use east, excuse me, section 23.3-14, TD, downtown, section 23.3-16, MUFH, mixed use federal highway, section 23.3-17, MUDH, mixed use Dixie Highway, section 23.3-18, MU-W, mixed use west, section 23.3-19, TODE, transit oriented development east, and section 23.3-20, TODW, transit oriented development west. And division 5, industrial districts, section 23.3-23, AI, artisanal industrial, and division 9, overlay districts, section 23.3-29, cultural arts district overlay. Article 4, development standards, section 23.4-4, fences, walls, and gates, section 23.4-10, off-street parking, section 23.4-13, administrative uses and conditional uses, section 23.4-15, cemeteries, mausoleums, calambriums. That's a good word. Section 23.4-16, mechanical systems / equipment for existing residential structures. Section 23.4-17, standby generator / permanent. And section 23.4-25, micro units. And Article 5, supplemental regulations. Section 23.5-1, signs, and providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you.
All righty then.
Oh.
All right, so kind of a quick summary of what we've got. I promise it reads a little worse when you're having to read the title out and see all the sections than it is. This is one of those situations where we have to do the same edits over and over in a bunch of different sections. So a quick summary of the main changes that are happening here. Accessory use area, we're amending the definition for an accessory use to specify the maximum total use area that can be devoted to an accessory use. So this is a question we've gotten, and we're hoping that, codifying it in here will help applicants out. Basically just saying an accessory use shouldn't be more than 30% of the principal use area. For the site plan review team, and site plan review sections hadn't been updated in quite a while. So we are doing some updates, clarifying membership, making sure that we don't have references to things like city police that we no longer have.
applications the team reviews and meeting requirements. For administrative and conditional use permits, we are moving the AUP regulations and putting them all together in one section so that all of the use permit information, a lot of which repeats each other, is just all together. And we cut down on some of that extra, repetitive language. We're also reorganizing those subsections so that they're in a more logical order for applicants to be going through, and codifying a use permit amendment process. So right now, if someone amends their business and would need another use approval, they would have to kind of start from scratch. So this allows them to make some amendments without having to maybe go back to a board in a conditional use permit case. For site plan reviews, we've gotten feedback from applicants that, they sometimes had a hard time telling in the code when a site plan review was required or what kind was required. So we're trying to clarify that. We're also working on revising the types of development that require a minor site plan, pushing some of those to a site plan modification and codifying that site plan modification process. So the difference with a modification is that it's concurrent with a building permit. It's a much shorter process. We're also removing redundant language, getting outdated requirements out of there, like requirements for 7 physical copies. We don't need that anymore because we can take stuff online. And adding some requirements for those site plan mods. For the use table, a lot of it's correcting smaller errors like low intensity takeout establishments should have already been in the beach district, allowing some minor repair services in IPOC that are appropriate for those industrial uses, correcting errors for residential uses in the neighborhood commercial district. That's something where the text of the NC district and the comp plan both called for residential uses to be there, but it didn't make it over to the use table. So we're correcting that. With social service centers, we're allowing medium intensity social service centers in that NC district and creating high and low intensity options for that use. We're also making some amendments for specific parcels within an existing special front setback requirement. There's an area between 5th Avenue South and I believe it's 13th Avenue South on South Lakeside Drive. Those really deep properties that abut the intercoastal, those already have a special setback in the single family zoning district of 50 feet instead of the usual 20. Because there's that existing deeper parcel size and deeper setback, as well as the limitation that you're on the intercoastal, we've had some customers have difficulties building an accessory structure that meets the requirement that typically it's supposed to be behind the structure. So this would add to that special front setback section an exception to allow a 1-story accessory structure, only one, you couldn't have, 4, 1-story tall accessory structure in front of the principal, as long as that accessory structure is still 75 feet back from the street. So minimal visual impact, but giving someone an option when there's not really much else for them to do to be able to build an accessory structure. We did get a question at PZB. These accessory structures would never be ADUs because, at least right now, ADUs are not allowed in single family residential, and all of the parcels that this would apply to are in single family residential. A big reason why we had so many sections in that title is because of this residential development in mixed use districts. So we're revising language in basically all of the mixed use districts to clarify the ability to do residential only development on lots of record in these mixed use districts that don't meet our current size or area requirements. So for example, if you're doing residential only development in mixed use federal highway and you happen to have a 25 or 35 foot lot instead of 50, clarifying in the text that multifamily and 2-family residential uses could be established on those lots of record as long as they follow all the other regulations. Also adding in language to help clarify in our mixed use districts for all residential development, they are led to use multifamily zoning district regulations rather than the mixed use. So we added some language to clarify that. It had been kind of people had to kind of chase it down in the text before, so we're trying to make it clearer for them. For fencing, we are revising the minimum setback for 6-foot tall fencing along roadways from 1 foot to 18 inches and
I apologize, that's a typo. It's currently 30 inches, not 1 foot, so we're reducing it from 30 inches to 18 inches. And clarifying fencing regulations for public and conservation uses. Those just hadn't been specifically called out in the code before. Parking reductions, this is what William was referencing in terms of direction from the commission. If you've been paying attention to their special meetings, this is directly from commission direction at one of their recent special meetings, reducing the parking reduction for mixed use development and affordable housing development from a 25% reduction down to a 15% reduction. In terms of generators, we are moving those regulations into the mechanical equipment section. That was again feedback that, people were having a hard time connecting the dots between things. So we moved it there to try to clarify that for people. We revised the permitted hours for maintenance running to slightly expand those, and we clarified and added a few zoning districts that prohibit the use of generators with integrated fuel systems. And then, as always, we've got housekeeping items. We created some new definitions for things like build-to lines and green roofs and sheds. We revised some existing definitions. So similar to how fences along roadways are now going to have that 18-inch setback, it's going to be the same for impermeable and semi-permeable surfaces. We revised language throughout the code to take out the references to retirement homes and instead refer to independent senior living. That was some feedback we had gotten as well in terms of, current language. Some corrections to signage and cultural arts districts, fencing for single destination retail, just correcting types of fencing, and then removing minimum distance requirements from cemeteries to things like ALFs and nursing homes. So that's everything. If anyone has questions, comments, discussion.
I want to repeat it? No. All right.
So what did zoning want to, I mean, how deep are they going to delve into the weeds here?
That is a great question. Basically, they had chosen to continue it to their August meeting, largely because they felt like they wanted to dive deeper before they gave full comments. One member of the Planning and Zoning Board, who is a construction professional, had some comments just about clarifying the green roof definition, and he had some suggestions to further clarify when site plan reviews are required. But I believe that is really all they got into at their meeting before they continued.
But you're not really, for instance, let's say site plan reviews, clarifying when a site plan review is required. You're not asking us to discuss when the answer to that.
No, he was having suggestions for the language to clarify further. He had suggestions for, if you say it this way or whatever, maybe it would be,
We're basically looking for a recommendation of continuance to the August meeting so they could do what they need to do. And if anything else needs to come back in front of us, it will.
Right, that wasn't really Elaine's question, though.
Go ahead, do my question. Well, I mean, again, let me go try it again. Clarifying when a site plan review is required. I mean, it seems to me that every one of these things would be a tremendous amount of work looking at everything. But what are you asking us to trust what you are recommending and allowing you to do it?
That's an easy way to put it. Much of what is written there is already in the code in one way or another. As Annie mentioned, much of it is to help clarify and make it easier for the developer or investor or homeowner to understand how the land development regulations work. And so, as you get into it more or would like to or not, if you feel like the language could be clarified in some way or you have a question of any kind of ambiguity, we can take that into consideration. Some things are new that are being added, but they're rather innocuous. Things come up as the code matures and is. And my phone's over there, so don't know what's happening. In any event, as a code is utilized over time, we do find little quirks in it. And part of where we are benefiting from having a lot of new staff, the primary author of our LDRs was myself and Nancy Stroud. And it went several years before it was really implemented because we wrote an entirely new zoning code as LDRs. And so we're finding things now as we have more development interest, things that were overlooked or they're not as clear in the minds of the average layperson as they were to me when I was writing it. Because if you're really close to something, sometimes you don't see the things the way other people would. So we have spent like twice a year trying to clarify things that do come up from time to time.
So my interpretation is this is kind of a housekeeping clerical fine tuning is how I'm interpreting.
Updating, yeah.
That's how it is.
Okay.
If I
mean, just to finish, for instance, I mean, we're not going to be talking about whether moving fences from 30 inches to 18 inches is, we're not discussing whether or not that's a good idea.
You could if you like, that's why we're here.
Mm.
You don't have to, it's up to you.
Okay.
Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead, Laura.
Thank you. Possibly in response to your question, possibly not. The reason I like to bring my iPad is I want to look at all 128 pages of the packet. So looking at this Exhibit E, Chapter 23 on page 18 of the ordinance, under Land Development Regulations Site Plan Review, it looks like there's language being stricken from Section B and then added, which says construction of all new structures outside the single-family residence or single-family and two-family residential zoning district. Site plan review shall not be required for residential properties with fewer than 3 total dwelling units. So it seems that that's a change. Anything, and it says in a couple of other places here too. So it seems like that's a change. So that's a minute kind of thing. If you're looking at all of this, that maybe that's something that P and Z want to take more of a look at is some of these specifics.
Well, that's
of
a really
that.
good example because that change, we don't require site plan review for single family or single family, two-family residences. But when you get into the mixed use district where you're trying to build one of those, it's kind of ambiguous as to whether you'd have to do site plan review or not. So that's clarity. It's not a huge change, but we've been implementing it in that way, and that's our understanding. So now it's very clear. If you're building a single family house and it happens to fall in a mixed use district, you don't have to go through the whole formal site plan process. But that was a good example to bring forward to everybody.
Thank you.
Yep. So could I get a motion of continuing?
Well,
Are you gonna talk?
we move forward to continue.
There you go. Motion to continue.
Motion continues.
Could I get it? Oh.
To a date certain?
August meeting?
August meeting.
Okay.
August 13th, 2025 meeting? Could I get that?
Was there some discussion, Mr. Waters, about doing it in July and not waiting till August? But you said the August meeting, the July meeting you anticipate is gonna be busy?
Okay.
So
Do we have a meeting for July?
you will be having 2 meetings in July, most likely. I don't know. Sherry had sent you guys some sort of like, hey, what's everyone's availability for all these dates? So our regular meeting in July is July 9th. Obviously it's a little bit close to 4th of July. So if people are on vacation, quorum, all that, but then we were likely going to have a special meeting July 16th about WMOTA. So we would not have anything else on that agenda because we expect that'll be a big discussion, public comment. We wouldn't want to put any other applicants through sitting through all of that as well. So if you wanted to continue it to your July 9th meeting, you could do that. Certainly not the
Well,
July 16th.
We were accommodating, so
But yeah,
that work?
if you wanted to wait until after the PZB had their discussion, you would need to wait until August because they are not having a July meeting.
What are we waiting for? What are we going to do?
I thought we were waiting on staff.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, historically, this board has liked to know what the planning and zoning board has recommended and what sort of edits they were suggesting. Sometimes it's informed how you guys voted, sometimes it hasn't. That's really up to you
Right.
guys.
But we have our own set of rules.
I mean, I felt we were accommodating staff, not the P and Z.
I mean, we
we've gotten, like I said, that feedback from one board member at their meeting before they continued it. So we'll be looking at edits for his, but we won't have any further knowledge of anything else that they might want
Okay.
us to edit.
So
at
going to July 19th, was it, you said?
July 9th.
July 9th.
Yeah,
And
we
then
can
the
look through it.
second one was.
The special meeting will be July
not doing that.
16th, but
So we're looking at
the
July 9th.
July 9th
June,
or August
We're here.
13th.
Okay.
But then August 9th, August 13th would be a little bit kind of late because then you won't have time to review it and have our
Right.
comments, right? So we should do it on July 9th.
Yeah, you guys could
So
do
you
that
have an
July
amended
9th.
motion and we need an amended second. All right,
What's the amended motion, I'm sorry?
moving a continuance to July
July
9th
9th.
meeting.
Okay.
Okay, we got an Ed first and an Ed second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No one opposed. Passes unanimously.
And maybe we can lead P and Z instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
Hey, why not?
Why not?
Rebels. All right, so now we get to learn about variances, right? It's the next thing on the agenda. How exciting.
Try to make this as painless as possible. Will you just do the clicking as we go through? So variances in the city of Lake Worth Beach. And we talk about the charter, the comprehensive plan, land development regulations, case law. This presentation will be available if you want. We can email it to you if you want to refer back to it because it's so amazing. Okay, let's skip ahead. So variants are when compliance with the charter, the code's not attainable. And we're looking at one section of the LDR, and you're only authorized to grant a variance for height, area, and size of structure, size of yards, parking requirements, and other area requirements in open spaces. So, for example, the establishment or expansion of a particular use or a density that might be prohibited or not permitted is not allowed by variance. So you can't grant variance for those things, uses or density. And you can't grant a variance if it's inconsistent with the city charter. And it can only be granted by the appropriate board. So that might be you, might be P&Z, might be the city commission. And again, the power to grant a variance is limited and contingent upon documentation that all required findings are met. Basically, variance is supposed to be rare. They're not supposed to be given out like candy. It's supposed to be something where there's really a hardship. And again, this talks about what are the required findings. So you have to have some kind of special circumstances or conditions that are peculiar to that land or building for which the variance is sought and don't apply generally to other nearby lands and buildings and is not the result of the applicant's action. So the applicant basically, the old saying is you can't create your hardship that all of a sudden now I need to be relieved from a hardship I created. And if the strict application.
One of those mics.
These are both off. Are y'all's mics all off?
Mine's off now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And the strict application of the LDR is if they deprive the applicant of any reasonable use of the land or building which the variance is sought. And again, any variance that is being proposed should be the minimum variance which makes possible. So it might only be a little bit. You don't need to grant the whole enchilada, as you say in my youth. The granting of the variance got to be in accordance with the spirit and chapter of the LDRs and can't be unduly injurious to contiguous property or surrounding neighborhood or detrimental to the public welfare. So again, I can't benefit me at your expense. And then we get wonderful case law. The more case law about variances than you can shake a stick at. They've got to create relief for legitimate unnecessary hardship. And the general law is that legitimate zoning regulations are good. They're in the public interest. They generally should be followed. They generally should be supported. And a variance is relieve some unique hardship that would otherwise make a zoning ordinance arbitrary, oppressive, confiscatory. Those are obviously all high standards. Oppressive is a strong word. Would render it void, non-constitutional. And to get a variance, you have to have this presence of an exceptional and unique hardship And again, when I said before, the hardship cannot be self-created and it cannot be one of mere economic disadvantage. So money is important, but it is not the end all be all here. And even if the neighbors agree, that's not enough to allow a variance. So again, the unique hardship must not be applicable to others in the same zoning classification. You know, again, they talk about reasonable return, self-created hardships. If you don't obtain a permit, you overbuild a lot. That's something you're created that problem. You're being deprived of rights. So your pool is smaller than the neighbors. Well, kind of too bad, you know, not really a variance. Sorry, Ed. We go back a long time. We could joke with each other. Even though he's a Tiger fan and I'm a Yankee fan, I still like the guy. Hardship must arise from circumstances peculiar to that particular realty. And again, not any self-originated expectations. I thought I was going to make $1 million on that game, but they lost. So that's that. Frankly, these to me get a little boring. This is talking about the cases, gives you examples. I mean, this was a guy that was trying to develop down in the Keys just this year, 2025, in a site plan to redevelop a property that had a boat ramp. The land development code down there said you got to have 6 parking spaces per boat ramp to accommodate trailers. And the property owner basically applied for a variance. And even though staff recommended it, I'm going to skip down to the end, the court said this is a self-created hardship. You knew when you bought the property that what the property size was, you knew about the requirements of the boat ramps, you knew the code required parking. And because you developed a site plan that didn't account for the parking because you wanted to have more units to rent out, sorry, you self-inflicted. And when you do have this kind of a request for a specific property, it's a quasi-judicial proceeding, and I think you're familiar with those. And again, quasi-judicial, you all know this, you've got to follow the local criteria. Again, I'm going to run through this. I know it's late. We started a little late. Go ahead. And again, quasi-judicial, the keys are due process. There's got to be notice, opportunity to be heard. You have to have some competent, substantial evidence. And you're all aware of the ex parte communications and disclosing it. And sometimes you're disqualified, often you're not. This is repetitive. You can even have the hybrid meetings. If one of you happens to be on Zoom, for example, you allowed to do it as long as there's a quorum physically present. Competent substantial evidence. I always love in law school. What is competent substantial evidence? What's evidence beyond a reasonable doubt? What's the preponderance of the evidence? Competent substantial evidence is one of the lower standards. It's not like the criminal case where you got to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You just have some competent evidence that's presented that establishes the facts that you need. So that's really all that it is. I used to say 51%, a little bit, not a whole bunch. Court rules again, they say it's competent substantial. There's a really low standard that says fairly debatable. Well, again, I'm going to pick on my friend Ed. He can debate whether the Tigers are better than the Yankees, but that's not the standard. That we could debate that all day long. You got to have some evidence. For example, the Tigers right now have a better record than the Yankees, so I got to give that to them. Procedural due process must be followed, and a prior grant of variance is not an appropriate consideration. Just because somebody else got one doesn't mean you're entitled, because every property is unique. And some of you that are from the Northeast might remember Con Edison. So this is the Con Edison case from 1938, where the U.S. Supreme Court is trying to define substantial evidence as more than a mere scintilla. So it's, like I said, it's just a little bit, not a whole lot. Such relevant evidence as a reasonable mind might accept as adequate to support a conclusion. And again, they keep going on and say it's not as stringent on the preponderance of an evidence, but you got to be a little more than that. I'm going to skip this one. It keeps talking about the competent substantial evidence. Ex parte communications. Again, you've got to disclose it. Don't go make site visits. You have to disclose anything like that. And if you do, it's presumed to be prejudicial. So please don't do that. You might be going to the. Yeah, let me go check it out. Why not? You're supposed to make it on the. You shouldn't do it. And if you do it, you have to disclose you did it. Everything is all about disclosure. right? You disclose that you did something, and you got to say that I can make a decision based on the evidence in front of me at the hearing, not something that I learned outside the hearing. And again, you can't have a bias against any party in the hearing. You can't have any direct or money interest in the outcome of the hearing. You can't prejudge the hearing. And again, it goes back to the ex parte communications. Even if you have a conversation with staff, you have to disclose, I had a conversation with staff. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm thanking Elizabeth because she put this together, not me. I don't have any questions, but sure.
Roughly what? Not much for the people, please. I think that was it. Okay. By the conditional decision.
Do you want us to email? We can email this to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 We'll email it to you. There you have. You don't have to take screenshots. I'm going to tell Elizabeth you liked it so much you were taking screenshots. She's going to like that.
I accept that.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Public comment, department report.
Department report.
Can jump in. Oh, no, hold on. Before we get rid of Glenn, and I didn't realize I hadn't seen the presentation. I want you all to keep in mind that because you are a local planning agency and you implement the LDRs in its full breadth as the Planning and Zoning Board, but you also do the historic preservation piece, you have something that's similar to a variance, but is not a variance when you have the historic waivers. We have the ability to do historic waivers in the context of historic contributing properties. And if that property were not in the historic district and it were not contributing, that item they may be asking would be fall into the variance category. So are all of you clear on the difference between the two? Well, I want it because sometimes the preservation board doesn't fully appreciate the hats that you have to wear. Historic waiver. Because we have we've got cases where to protect the historic character and integrity of an historic structure, or to allow it to get a little bit bigger, or to meet reasonable accommodations, we do have a little more loose appreciation of what can the strict application of the LDRs might be detrimental to the preservation of that building. It doesn't come up a lot. It's going to come up more when you're trying to add on to a historic contributing property, and to add on, you might be creating what would technically be in other areas a variance. But in order to preserve that contributing resource, it's necessary to sort of go beyond or a little bit outside the rules. And that's why you have the ability to grant an historic waiver. You granted a historic waiver as an example for the Gulfstream Hotel. You may not have been on the board when this happened, but part of their building, they're in the flood zone, but the board is able to grant certain kinds of waivers so that when you do a substantial improvement, it doesn't have to be lifted out of the flood zone or to a height. And so in the Gulfstream, you provided a mechanism to allow the addition on the back to be integrated so it didn't meet technically the requirements of FEMA, but that addition was necessary in order for the Gulfstream to be preserved and restored. That's the most recent example I can think of.
And so that technically did come as a base flood elevation variance, but that is different. It has slightly different criteria than our standard variance. We've got in our historic preservation section. Let me see if I can scroll to the right section way at the bottom here. So in our incentives, that's where those criteria. So unlike the 4 criteria for the variance, these have special criteria for the waivers. That's easier to meet. Mm-hmm. We kind of touched on it earlier. We're going to have 2 meetings in July, our regular on the 9th and the special meeting on the 16th. Please let us know as soon as you know if you are not going to be in attendance at those, so that we can have a sense of quorum before those occur. Sorry, William has more.
We have a lot more. That's okay. It's all right. You may or may not know, we have been working on for more than 2 years a mobility plan for the city of Lake Forest Beach. We're in now part 2, phase 1, which is the identification of how we might put together a mobility fee structure. It will eventually be an amendment to our comp plan. You will likely see that in the fall, some portion of that. You will see prioritization of various projects, how they may be split between county responsibility and city, and there will be a fee structure that will be coming out of that as to what the mobility fee might be for new construction in the city and how possibly it will be shared or split or collected between the city and the county. We also are about a third of the way done or 2/3 of the way done with the carbon neutrality element for the comp plan. It'll be the first one in the state. It's geared at looking at how we can incorporate practices and strategic goals and objectives to reduce the carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions in the city. And hopefully it will serve as a template for the other communities to adopt it. We are getting onto the tail end of the open space recreation master plan, which will also be a comp plan amendment that you will see before the end of the year. I do want you to stay abreast of, I think it's the next, there's a special meeting on the 26th. The city commission will be discussing the first task order with Ziskovich out of Miami for studying what could or could possibly happen at the beach. Even though it's not historic, it has historically been a big can of worms. So likely that study might lead to LDR changes or comprehensive plan changes, and definitely a referenda or two in March. Well, right now, the beach has a limitation of a lease with a private entity of no more than 30 years. Its height is restricted to 45 feet and 2 stories. The amount of area that the beach could devote to private enterprise is a little wishy-washy. And what the community may appreciate in terms of if we were to have a P3 or a public-private partnership with someone, how much of the beach are you willing to, like, not the beach itself, but the land area, go to some sort of private enterprise to help fund the rest of it? That's the 3 areas that I think we would have some kind of referenda. And so we'll see, but you do all need to stay tuned because whatever happens, there will be LDR changes to the beach and casino zoning district. We are getting ready to float an RFQ to solicit proposals from qualified entities to help us study the golf course, as well as the City Hall Annex and the City Hall Auditorium/City Hall in the same fashion we're doing as the beach. It may be in the same person, the same entity, it may not, but you have, a critical interest in the City Hall Annex and the City Hall itself. And the golf course is getting ready to celebrate its 100th anniversary, or maybe it just did. And so you have a bit of a role to play there, whatever comes out of that. Trying to think what else we have a lot. We have preliminarily got our budget completed. And Scott and Annie are working very hard to negotiate an offer to somebody who's very qualified to be our landscape planner. Hopefully we keep our fingers crossed and that will work well. And we'll get out from under that burden of not having appropriate staff available. There's some other things. The Gulfstream, if you hadn't seen it, did choose a color. It's pink. And I believe in that same article, they're shooting to try to be open in February. But sure.
Sorry, really quick, could you get your mic on just for us writing minutes later?
I have a lot of things. I mean, I have a few questions. We'll be talking about the beach, we'll be about the golf course. And is this to generate revenue, bring developers to town? What's all the changes for? There's a reason for it. I mean, just
Well, start with the golf course.
Yeah.
The golf course is sinking. It needs to be revitalized, refreshed. It needs a facelift.
Right.
The city probably doesn't have the money to do it. So is the community open to a public-private partnership of some sort to redo the golf course and possibly allow some kind of private development on some portion of the golf course where it might be allowed?
I'm assuming
That's a hypothetical.
that's the, I'm assuming condos or rentals or whatever it may be.
It could be a hotel, it could be a condo, it could be nothing, it could be something. The same thing with the beach. The beach has some maintenance challenges and some investment challenges. There we have a P3 unsolicited proposal from an entity called Copper Line, proposing what I can kind of guesstimate from its rendering a 12-story hotel at the beach, on the beach, 100,000 square feet of mixed use retail something, a maritime attraction, and I believe it's 1,000 or 1,100 space parking garage. That's been sitting on the city's desk since January. Unsolicited. There has been unsolicited interest, not in the formal sense, from two other entities. And so we were already working toward what is the community open to seeing happen at the beach. Ziskovich was selected as our consultant to work with us, I think back in December, through the procurement process. Negotiations went forward. A contract was signed, and then the first task order, which is looking at all the history of the beach and getting citizen input through charrettes and surveys and whatever else to move forward to what will Lake Worth Beach embrace, and then turn that into some referenda items in March of 26.
I think we're gonna need a bigger room.
We might have it open air, and we might just take over the vacant lot of the Gulf Stream. That might be big enough. Put up a tent.
If it's presented to the public properly, I think we'll get some different points of view. I know in the past, 5 years ago, they tried public parking and they could not comprehend that we're not selling it, but that's a whole nother. Okay.
I actually did have a, are you finished, Mr.
I'm fine for now. I'm
Okay.
finished. That was a lot to dump on you.
That was, thank you very much. And thanks again, staff, for all of your work. We really appreciate you. It was a lot of work, especially the first proposal, and a lot of work was done, and it's noticed and appreciated. That wasn't really my comment, though. I'm under the understanding, I know they were going to do interviews for the CRA, for opening on the CRA. And I think there's at least one person who's cycling out for term. And it's my understanding that they're also going to be looking at our board as well for the opening.
That'd be wonderful. I'm not gonna be here for the August meeting. And, I don't know how much longer I'm gonna be here.
What do you mean?
Well, I've been on the board. 6 years.
Here meaning what?
Permanent. I mean, it is.
You wanna quit? That what you're trying to say?
I won't be here for the August meeting. All right.
Do you know when your term ends? Somebody knows when
That's the word. I think it is July.
your term ends.
I think it is July.
I don't know,
I
how does that
recall
work?
we changed a while ago, and I think Mr. Dorenzo falls under this. You serve at the pleasure of the commission. And Glenn might correct me, but I think we went away with set terms, because when we had a change in commission and people still had terms left and people weren't happy with who they were or what they were doing, you couldn't get rid of them unless for cause. So I think some of you are actually serving at the pleasure of the commission. We can have Sherry look at it when she gets back, but I think based on some of your faces, some of you likely are serving at the pleasure with not a fixed term.
I was on the impression it was a 3-year term, but maybe I was mistaken.
I think William's right. I think it's changed. I think you serve forever until you either resign or you're replaced. But we could double check that.
And hopefully somebody will tell you you're going to be replaced before you're replaced.
Don't come in. A motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.